is on. Dead to victory, excuse me. The great thing about what we're studying in Revelation is that God has an amazing plan for your life. I must have heard that many times this weekend. God has an amazing plan for your life, right? Revelation chapter 1, we talked about dead to holiness, right? So being dead to holiness, that mankind, when faced with the almighty holy God, can only just face immediate death. Because he is holy and we are not. We are also dead to truth. We can't find truth and meaning on our own. We're also dead to worship. We talked about outside of God, there exists no capacity for worship. There exists no capacity for giving glory to Him. There's no capacity for heaven. If you take God out of the equation, heaven's not around. Right? He's just not around. Now, session 4 of Dead to Victory, we're going into Revelation chapter 12, verse 7. Many people who have looked into the book of Revelation, a lot of us maybe who have been thinking about what the book is about, a lot of us might have said it's about the Antichrist. If you've never heard that term before, good, because the word doesn't even appear in Revelation. Anybody know that? There is no word. The Antichrist isn't even. The word Antichrist comes in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, which is the same author, but it's a different book. Now, there is mention of a couple of beasts we're going to get into in a little bit, but it doesn't really even say that they are the either one of them. And even if they are, we don't even know, which one it is, and therefore we don't. It's not about that. But, however, we do want to mention some things because it does seem quite a bit of space, not as much committed to Jesus, but there is quite a bit of space devoted to the devil himself. And the devil is a reality. We talked we talked a bit about heaven in the last session. We talked a lot about what's in heaven, what's not in heaven, and we're going to talk about right now about who Satan is and what he has to do with all of this. Verse 7 in chapter 12. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back. Oh, I would love to see a movie on this. Right away, verse 7 is war arose in heaven. It doesn't really tell you when this war took place. Many are saying this is a war that took place in the beginning, before Adam and Eve sinned. Because of some things we're going to see later. Some say it's happening right now. Some say it's going to happen. But before we get into the answer to that, there's war arose in heaven, and Michael the archangel fought with the devil and his demons. Like, that must have been quite the battle. Similar to the ones you guys just had in Derbyshire, I would say. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. Now, in verse 9, and the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. We know what this dragon, depicted as the dragon, is. This is the devil. This is the one who deceived Adam and Eve in the garden. All right? One of the reasons I think it's pretty clear that this happened in the beginning was because this is the same devil who deceived Adam and Eve, and if he's deceiving Adam and Eve, it would make sense for him not to be able to do so unless he's on earth. Well, this is describing to you how Satan came to come on earth. Keep in mind, Satan is not from here. Satan was created by God originally as an angel. And when he was defeated, he came down to earth. Some people, this is Christian mythology. I went over this with children's church kids a while back. We talked about Christian myths, and I was like, what do you think about the idea that Satan is in hell? At least half the room, yeah, he's in hell, he lives in hell. Like, that's Cartoon Network theology. He's not in hell. If he was, we wouldn't be having as many problems as we are right now. And they were like, wait, what? He's not in? No, he's here. He's the God of this world, right? Hell is just as much a punishment for Satan as it is anybody else, right? So, but this is telling you how Satan came to come on earth, right? He came from defeat. And when we have, first thing we have to understand, when we're talking about Satan, we're talking about the devil, we are talking about a defeated angel. We're talking about a defeated angel. We're talking about an angel who has not had victory. He's had some small ones, perhaps, but not over God. This is a devil who has to ask God permission for pretty much everything he ever does. A lot of times I think we give this guy a little bit too much credit. Satan and his angels were thrown down. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation, that's a familiar word, happens a lot. Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. Right? The great deceiver, right? The deceiver of the whole world, right? So right away, mankind is dead to victory, right? Because Satan, in your notes, Satan is the deceiver of this world. That comes from verse 9. Satan is the deceiver of this world. That is how he works. He is the deceiver of this world. He is going to deceive. That's his thing. Okay? And mankind, as defeated as Satan is, mankind cannot have victory over Satan on his own. He cannot. Because Satan is the deceiver. That is his thing. Now, Satan stands, as a result, as mankind's accuser. This is a very interesting concept, right? I heard a loud voice in heaven, hey, the salvation and the power of the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. The accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. Now, what would Satan stand to gain by accusing God's people? Because Satan knows his time is short. Satan knows his time will eventually end, and he wants to drag as many people down with him as possible. That is what his mind is set to do, right? And in order to do that, he knows the biggest threat to mankind being reconciled to God is their sin. He knows that. He knows we're dead to holiness. He knows we're dead to truth. He knows we're dead to worship. And so he accuses them. Keep in mind, the sin that you have, even as a Christian, is still going to be weighing on the front of your mind. Some of you, if you gave your life to Christ at a very young age, technically, you're going to have bigger sins after you were saved than when you did before. If you thought about it, think about it. Like if you're really saying that you gave your life to Christ at 6 years old, and now you belong to a holy God, how on earth, how dare you admit that you had more sin in your life now than you did before? Wouldn't that have made you a more holy person? But those of you that gave your life to Christ when you're like my age, like 4, 5, 6 years old, technically, without a doubt, you have bigger sin now. You have bigger sin problems now than you did when you were 4. These are things that Satan is bringing to God's doorstep right now. You cannot love this person. Look what they did. You cannot love them. Look what they did. You cannot have them. They're mine. Look what they did. They're just like me. That is his M.O. And when you find yourself so burdened by your sin that you go even further and say, I don't think God loves me anymore, that is a lie from the pit of hell. That is a lie from the worker, the deceiver of this world. Well, understand, Satan's best lies are half-truths, right? Because he's right. Sin makes you dead, right? He's right about that. Sin, and God can't be around sin. He's right about that. God doesn't like those things. He's right about that. So what are you going to do? You're going to bring it to the Lord. When I was 16 years old, 17 years old, I don't know. I was like a junior in high school. We had this science teacher who was like horrible. I mean, he was older. He was a very sour guy. He would take the book every class and he would plop it on his. If he bothered to stand, he would plop it on himself and he would just read this book, and we were like, what on earth is this guy doing? And he would assign assignments and hardly grade them, and he was rude. He would talk about people and his family in a really gross way. Anytime you talked, you were like, man, this guy is really odd. He assigned a group project at one point, and I was in a group with two girls, and we completed our project. One girl did a lot of the work, which is what group projects are like, and we turned our stuff in, and he graded her. He gave her a much lower grade than the rest of us, than the other three of us, and she went up, and she was like, what? How could I get this grade? And so she walked up to the desk, and she was like, can you tell me why I got a lower grade than the rest of them? He looked at her and said, I don't have to tell you why I gave you anything. Go sit down. And like in Asia, most people don't stick up for themselves. It's very rude to confront someone about something that they've done to you. And even if you're right and they're wrong, if they're the authority figure over you, if they're like a teacher, you can't argue with them. And so it's very hard for this girl, a shy girl in her own right, to really stick up for herself. I am not Thai, if you didn't know, and I was raised a little bit differently, and I started boiling up a little bit, and she was like, well, please, would you just tell me what I did wrong? And he's like, I don't have to tell you anything. You heard what I said, go sit. And he starts yelling at her, and she's starting to cry right there. And no one in the class is saying a thing, which in America, everybody would throw chairs, which is the opposite extreme, not the right thing either. But some of you are like, yeah. Some of you guys who just moved from Asia are saying, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I stood up in the classroom and said, she's just asking what she did wrong. She deserves an explanation for what she did for her work. And he looked at me and said, you sit down or you're going to detention. And I went and walked right up to the desk. I walked right up to the desk and I was like, she deserves to know what she did right. He's like, I told you to sit down and go to detention. And I was like, all right, I'll take that. That sounds fine. I wasn't rude to him. I was not like, I was not disrespectful. I was just clearly I was clearly sticking up for my friend. I found it was wrong that she was up there crying all by herself with no one to back her up. So obviously, I go to the principal's office, and we've been complaining about this teacher for a long time. And so I went to the principal's office, and I'm like, this guy is nuts. He just gave me detention for sticking up for someone. And he's like, Gary, you can't defy a teacher in the middle of the class. You have to have detention. And I was like, this teacher's fine. And so I went home, and I went to the next authority, my father. And I said, Dad, this is what happened. So Dad calls the principal, and the principal's like, well, at our school we don't advocate for disrespect and for students to defy a teacher. And my dad said, the way I hear it, this guy was berating a girl who needed counsel and needed to know what she did wrong, and that's all he was doing. And he said, well, I got to stand by my teacher. And my dad's like, well, I understand, but I think we all know what direction we're headed with this teacher. I think you know, as well as everybody else in the school. You know how you can kind of tell this teacher ain't going to make it that long. You know how you can tell? Like, I think we know where this is going. And when this goes where we know it's going, I'm going to say I defended my son, and you're going to say you defended this teacher. And I guarantee you, we both know who's going to be more satisfied with their decision. If you uphold this decision to give my son detention, I understand. I don't want my son to be disrespectful either. But understand that he's doing so under my instruction and is therefore under my protection. So if he's going to detention, I'm sitting with him. Do you think, how in trouble do you think I felt sitting in detention with my dad behind me? You know, how in trouble? I didn't feel in trouble at all. And there I was, being accused by a teacher of being defiant and being disrespectful, being accused of him of being all these things. And my dad was sitting there going, no, he isn't. And what's interesting is, Satan can deceive you, and he can convince you that you're nothing, and he can convince you that you're dead in your sin, even after you've given your life to Christ. He can convince you that, and he can make you miserable because of it. He can do that. But keep in mind, what Jesus is going to promise to do is sit right there along with you. And he's going to tell you, it's not his judgment that matters. He doesn't judge you at the end of all things. I do. I mean, Satan doesn't even know everything. Keep in mind, remember, like when Satan, when Jesus was eating the Last Supper with his disciples, okay? The Last Supper, it was the night when he was going to be arrested to go to the cross the next day. Last Supper comes around, and after they broke bread, did the whole Lord's Supper communion thing, the thing that we do now to remember Jesus by, it says that someone entered Judas. You remember who it was? Yeah. Right? Satan entered Judas, and he got up, right? Already knowing what he was going to do, and he got up to go and report to the high priest where Jesus was going to be alone that night, so they knew how to arrest him. Effectively betraying his trust and betraying him to a lawless court. Keep in mind, he was under the possession, right? This is what it says right there, that Satan himself possessed him. But understand this. Don't you think it's a little curious that Satan's best plan when Jesus came was to kill him? That was his best plan. That was plan A. Actually, probably plan A was when he tempted him in the desert, and that went south. So his next plan B, was, okay, oh, this is going to be great. Oh, this is great. You guys got to pay attention. Beelzebub, please pay attention. It's going to be great. Okay, I am going to make the people he loves most turn around and kill him. This is the best plan. This is why I deceive the world. This is why I own the world. That's right. That is his biggest plan the whole time was to put Jesus on the cross. What an idiot. Like, the whole reason Jesus wins is because Jesus got on the cross. And he died and came back to life. I'm telling you, that didn't happen because Satan knew what was going to happen. That happened because Satan had not a clue what was going to happen. That was his best plan. Yeah, and you got to think that as soon as Jesus came back to life, Satan was like, oh. He's thinking, oh no, no. And everybody else is like, wow, great plan. You know, that was great. I mean, at the end of the day, all Satan can do is God's will anyway. Right? That's the only thing he's going to be able to do. So, but now he's on earth, right? And he is the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them night and day before our God. Verse 11, though, and they have, who's they? The brothers, right? The brothers, the Christians, the saints, right? And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives even unto death. Right there, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Did they overcome him by all the amazing things that they did? Did they overcome him by all the times they went to church and heard a great sermon? Did they overcome him because they knew a lot? Did they overcome him because they came from a Christian family? No. They overcame him because by the blood of the Lamb, by Jesus' sacrifice for them, right? They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Testimony means it's like bearing witness. It is kind of like a good definition I heard was like your story of knowing God. Your how you came to decide to follow Christ. And I'm telling you, the testimony of a Christian is powerful. I don't care what it is. It is powerful. How God took your sin upon himself is extremely powerful. I remember I take college teams and people to Thailand every year. I'm taking another team this year, and we always go to church plants and visit all these church plants in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there are these church plants out there that every single person you meet is a first-generation Christian. That means they're the first Christian in their entire family. So it's quite the church. And one of the places we go is a shrimp farm. It's just a series of shrimp farms out there, and there's a little hut there that all the families of these shrimp farms come in, and they have a worship service together. And these people could not be more different than Americans. But they are all radically saved believers. And I love taking my people in And we go in, and all the Americans kind of line up, and all the Northern Thai kind of line up. And I just say, and one time I told the Thais, they're a Northern Thai dialect, so it's even they're very much they feel like inferior. They feel like they are the least of the least, right? Americans would never be able to relate to this, but they really think that because of their skin color and because of their dialect and because of their ethnicity, that they are literally less than everyone else. Like if you talk to them, they won't even look at you. They'll just look somewhere else. And it's so awkward, but it's crazy because Americans can't. We always think we're better than everybody else, but they are the exact opposite. And so one of the great ways to witness and a great way to fellowship with them, you look at them and their leaders look you right in the eye. And no Northern Thai does that. But these leaders of this church, they do, because they've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. And so what I like to do to encourage them is I have the Americans share their testimonies, and then I have them share them back. And it's incredible. Because again, our lives could not be more different. The lives between Americans and these Thais cannot be more different. But we're all Christians here in this room. And even though, they have stories from villages of animism and witch doctors and all this stuff that make the Americans go like, what? Like how? And landmines and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, how could you? But at the end of the day, everybody said pretty much the same thing. I was a sinner, and Jesus saved me. People that couldn't have been more different than us from the exact opposite side of the world are saying, I was a sinner. I was dead in my sin, and Jesus saved me. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives even unto death. And therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea. For the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Satan does stand as your accuser, and he is in great wrath here. But he isn't in great wrath because he thinks he's really going to win. He's in great wrath because he knows his time is short, and he's upset about it. Jesus' authority, right? So mankind is dead to victory because Satan is the deceiver of this world. And you know it. Satan stands as mankind's accuser. But Jesus, sorry for the typo, but Jesus has authority to throw down and defeat Satan. That is his right. That is his authority. He also has the authority to save his people through his blood and their testimony. If you're a believer and you don't have a testimony, that's like saying water that isn't wet. That doesn't make any sense. Like every Christian has a testimony. That may not be like the next person or the next person, but you have it. You have some kind of sort of reason that you chose Jesus. And if you don't, maybe you haven't chosen him yet. You just chose your parents' faith or some nice people that spent some time with you. And it's important that you know the difference, or you won't survive this tribulation that's coming. You won't survive it. There's a lot of other figures that you'll see in here. There's in chapter 13, there's a beast involved. Just to kind of just give you a clue, chapter 13, verse 1. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. Holy cow. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power. The dragon's the devil guy again. Gave his power and his throne and great authority. Wow, that's so much power. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled. Wow, as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast. Dadgum, people, make up your minds. Saying, who is like the beast? And who can fight against it? And it goes on and talks about that first beast. And now there's a lot of people that are going to be like, it's important that you know who the beast is, and the beast is. And they're going to name a bunch of people. Keep in mind, there's no assurance in here that the beast is even a person. It doesn't even assure you that. I mean, 1 John talks about, yes, you have heard that Antichrist is coming. And yes, there are indeed many Antichrists have already entered into the world. And he defines Antichrist as any spirit, anyone who, and he didn't even use a person there. Any spirit that defies the person of Jesus, that's the spirit of the Antichrist. You know, and people use that and say, oh, see, here's the beast, and so he's kind of defying Jesus, so he must be the Antichrist. Keep in mind, there's just no way. You can't really. The point isn't for you to come out and say, okay, I know what the Antichrist is. It is. I mean, literally every generation has had their best guess, and they have it wrong up to this point. It doesn't have to be a person. It might be, but it doesn't have to be. And then there's a second beast. So again, people when they say the Antichrist, they usually are referring to one of the two beasts, and I'm like, which one? Second beast. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. Oh, it had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. Oh, that's good to know. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. Right? So, golly, keep in mind, like false teaching and false worship is always pluralistic. It's always pluralistic. It's like, hey, here is someone who's not God who can worship, and that person is never exclusive. Whatever it is you're supposed to worship, be it video games or be it a relationship with an intimate relationship with someone or an actual other religion, almost none of them care that you have other affections. Almost none of them. It's fine with them that a Buddhist will worship many gods. A Hindu will worship many gods. A Buddhist could actually go to a Christian church, worship there. No big deal to a Buddhist. It's just no big deal. Worship as many gods as you want. You don't want to tick one off. And this one makes you worship the first beast. Hey, worship that guy. He's pretty cool. It performs great signs, even made fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. Wow! And by the signs it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So if you didn't worship the other beast, he'd kill you. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast and the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who is understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And everybody goes like, every time you have to say the number 666, it means the Antichrist. The word Antichrist doesn't even come here. 666 is simply just a number, an apocalyptic number that's short of 777, which is God's number. It falls short. It is man's number. It is not about some kind of mischievous thing up in the sky. This is about man's failure to worship God and worship something else instead. And of course, when we'll get into this in the next session about the doctrine of hell, but here it's talking about, when they talk about the Antichrist is going to put the mark of the beast on you. It's going to be a number, and it's going to be like, and you can't buy or sell without it. So every time, this is great. Look in modern news, and anytime someone talks about putting a barcode on your wrist, Christians freak out, and they go, "What's the mark of the beast?" And they go crazy about it, and they keep in mind, this doesn't have to be a literal thing. This is highly symbolic literature. The most important thing about this is that you know that there is going to be many competing things for your worship. Many competing things for your worship. And the beast right here is going to oppress Christians. We know that. But we don't know it's a person, and they're like, well, it's going to be some kind of economic thing. Oh my goodness, people, when someone came to Christ in Thailand, when we were doing our church planting there with the mission teams I was doing, a boy and his mom came to Christ. Boy and his mom, first Christians in their city since the dawn of time. And his mom came to Christ initially, or she said a prayer really, and then as soon as the merchants on her street, because she sold ice cream on the street, as soon as they learned that she wanted to become a Christian, they said, you cannot sell anything on this street if you become a Christian. And she went home and she was living with a boyfriend, and her boyfriend said, I will not live with you if you become a Christian. We're done. And she went to the Christian, and the Christian said, that sounds like a great idea. You shouldn't be living with someone like your husband anyway. And so this idea that we have to, it could be, I'm telling you, this is happening right now. That this isn't some kind of like, a lot of Christians are worried about having the mark of the beast. I'm telling you, if you belong to Christ, if you are a Christian, you worship God, you can't have the mark of the beast on you. We're going to get into that in the next session. But I want you to understand the doctrine of Satan here and the doctrine of whatever the Antichrist is not about who the hero is. The hero has already been announced. It's Jesus, and he has authority over everything in it. Let's pray. Father, we give you glory for defeating Satan. We give you glory for what you have done in our hearts and redeeming us to yourself. If there's anybody in here who has never given their life to you and has worshipped other things instead, I pray that you would impress on their heart to run after you, to give your life to them. Give their life to you so that you can change them, turn them around, and make them focused on you and worship of you like they never have before. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. It is about time to go run around and hurt people. Yay! Dawn